prototyped in the late 1960s by General Dynamics as YF-16. The name was later shortened to F-16 as it was adopted as the United States Air Force's new light fighter. It was officially named Fighting Falcon by the Air Force in 1980, but was renamed by those who know her best, her pilots. The jet's sleek design and swift lethality earned her the name Viper. But what makes a great fighter jet isn't all just a cool name and design. Eager to take to the skies, her maiden flight occurred accidentally during a high-speed taxi test on the 20th of January 1974. It is the #1 most popular fighter jet in the world, with well over 2,000 units currently in active service for 25 different militaries across the globe. It has dozens of confirmed air-to-air victories in over 20 conflicts and scored the first kill with the US military's AIM-120 missile. All of this information, though, takes a co-pilot seat to this one simple fact. It goes fast. Hello and welcome to the DCS F-16C Block 50 Viper. Today we'll be going over the startup procedure and landing, taxiing, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, last time I tried to record this, it took 25 minutes, so I don't have time to explain every single switch and button in this cockpit, but we'll get to a fair few of them as they come up. First thing we're going to want to do is close the cockpit. That's with this little switch right here. We push that down until the noise stops. Then to lock it, we push down this little yellow thing called the spider. And then we turn on our main power to full and turn on our emergency UHF radio. Now we can radio the air traffic controller and request startup. We're at Sukhumi Babashara Airport. Request startup.
Sukhumi, in field 1-1. Request startup.
And they'll clear us.
Field 1-1. Sukhumi, cleared for startup.
Alright, we're clear for startup, so first thing we're going to want to do is come down here to our jet fuel start switch and flip that up, and you'll see that our RPM will start to increase up to 20%. Alright, it's at run, and the run light is on. So now we're going to take our throttle and move it past that first detent and up to the white line at idle. And then our RPM will continue to increase. And pretty soon here we'll be able to start. Okay. So now, from this point, most of our instruments work. We could go take off right now if we really wanted to, but we're going to want to turn on all of our flight computers, all of our systems, all of our navigation to make sure that we're not just sitting duck and we don't get blown out of the sky in like half a second. So the first thing we want to do is come down to our avionics panel and flip all these switches on. The map switch does not work in the Block 50 Viper. The MIDS LVT switch, I don't know what it does, but we have to turn that on. That's important. The INS switch, we turn that to normal. INS was the inertial navigation system that was for navigating before GPS. So we have our latitude and longitude coordinates right there. We have to confirm those. So on the integrated control panel, we hit enter. With the data control switch, we hit down and then enter again, and that's confirmed our coordinates. This is our oxygen panel. Oxygen panel, we don't need to touch that. This is our air conditioning panel. We also don't need to touch that. Here's our lighting panel. I like to keep the console light all the way up, the instrument panel all the way up, and the data entry display a little bit brighter. Then our floodlights, turn those up a little bit. Then we come up to our HUD switches. Depending on what switches we flip up, different things will show up on our heads-up display. I like to turn this off, and that'll declutter it a little bit. So now if we turn it on, it's nice and pretty without all of the clutter that we see when we have that on. Then we turn on our radar altimeter and fire control radar. While we're on the ground, the fire control radar will not be on because it can mess with electronics and buildings, and I think it can kill birds too, so not a great idea to have your radar on, but the F-16 will not allow you to turn it on while you're on the ground. Right here is our fault panel. If anything goes wrong, we'll know immediately. Here's our attitude indicator. We want to uncage it and then zero it at the horizon. On our horizontal situation display, we turn this to Link 16, and that'll allow our aircraft's radar to communicate with other aircraft's radar. Here's our altimeter. We're going to want to turn that to electric to get readings from our radar altimeter. And at this specific airport, the QFE is 29.88, and that'll set our altimeter to read 0 when we're on the ground instead of sea level. Next thing we do is come down here. I like to set this to external wing. This is the fuel quantity select. So on this gauge now it'll show how much fuel that we have in our external bags. When those are empty, we can jettison them and get rid of the extra weight and drag. Over on this panel, this is our miscellaneous. This allows us to arm our weapons, handle our autopilot, all that good stuff. Don't need to touch it during startup. The parking brake here isn't necessary because this specific jet does not roll forward when idle, but a good idea nonetheless. We turn on our taxi lights and turn on Cat 3. That is for heavier loads, so either if you have some pretty heavy bombs or if you have external fuel tanks like we do. If you're just equipped with nothing or air-to-air missiles, then you can use Cat 1, and that just allows your aircraft to be a little bit more maneuverable. We're going to come down here to the Threat Warning Auxiliary panel, turn on our Radar Warning Receiver. Right here, we'll see incoming radar signals that are bouncing off of our plane and going back, maybe to the enemy or potentially friendly planes, surface-to-air sites, and just any general radar. Next we go to our countermeasure panel. We turn our RWR switch and our jammer switch on. Chaff, flare on, mode semi, something that'll become apparent later. And then we turn on our hammocks symbology, and that will turn on whenever we look out of the cockpit. This little screen right here that gives us information that would otherwise be on our HUD. This is our radio volume and just cockpit voice volume. Here's our ECM, or electronic countermeasures. We turn this to operational, XMIT to 1. We turn on all these switches, and then press our countermeasure switch down. And that has now armed our electronic countermeasures pod, which will, when we're targeted by an enemy radar and we're locked up, it will pinpoint the source of that, and then it'll bombard that emitter with interfering signals to try and get rid of the lock. Back here we come to our IFF panel. We set this to norm, and otherwise we are set up already. That will allow friendly planes to know who we are and to not shoot at us. Next we'll come to our lighting panel. Turn these to bright and keep that on flash. Turn off our formation lights. Now we can look back at the red and the green, and we're all good. Here's our malfunction and indicator lights test button. If we hit that, it'll get noisy in here, light up all the warning lights, and make sure that if we do have a problem, we'll notice.
Pull up. Altitude. Warning. Jammer. Counter. Chaff flare. Low. Out. Block. Caution. Bingo. Soda. IFS.
Good. Our INS is at 6.3/23. That means we've been calibrating for 6.4 minutes, and it's counting down from 100 to 10. And once it reaches 10, it will be calibrated and ready to take off. Until then, we'll just sit tight and wait for it to calibrate. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. It is a beautiful, cold, and sunny morning in Russian-occupied Georgia. Our INS is calibrated, so we're going to come down to this switch and set it to navigate. And now we're all ready to contact the tower and request taxi to runway. We're going to say, Sukumi, Enfield 1-1, request taxi to runway.
Sukumi, Enfield 1-1, request taxi to runway.
And they'll clear us. And
Enfield
sometimes they
1-1, Sukumi, clear to taxi to runway 30.
Yep, clear to taxi. So we will take off our parking brake, turn on our nose wheel steering, and that allows us to use our rudder pedals to steer. Add some power, and go ahead and move to the taxiway. Alright, once you get up here, we're going to hold short of the runway. We're going to contact tower. We don't have to do that in a private match, but in a public match, we would probably contact the local airspace, say something like, oh, I'm out of practice, but Sukumi Airspace, Enfield 1-1, taking runway 30 for straight out departure Sukumi. Then we look left, right, left, and cross the street. And triple check.
Enfield 1-1, Sukumi, you are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QFE 29.88.
Enfield 1-1. Right, so we're going to hold here and do our last few things. We're going to arm our seat. That will allow us to eject if we need to. Here's our probe heat switch. Turn that on. Do a double check of everything. Looks good to me, so we're going to go ahead and take off. Push our throttle to full, hold the nose wheel brakes, wait for the afterburner to come on. Once we see a speed of about 80 knots, we turn off our nose wheel steering because now our rudder can control left and right for us. About 180, we start to rotate, and then slowly lift off the ground, and we're up. Wheels up, landing lights off, and we're good. Next, I tried to teach my friend, and, well, here's how that went. Actually, let's
What's
go ahead.
the back button?
Oh, I have no idea. I think it's funny. Then the...
Sorry.
I did not spend $320 to play this game just to get tailgated.
How close can I? Said
No.
I can't stop.
Great work.
Oh no, the missile. I can't be trusted. I'm sorry.
Now, let off. Be very careful. Now, nose wheel steering off with S. 150 knots, start to Cobra. 200 knots. 230 knots, you should be able to take off.
I wish I was a pilot, soaring over everyone and everything, looking at the land
And apart from all that, here are some experiences that I had in multiplayer matches testing out my skills against other pilots. In this clip, I was entirely out of fuel running on emergency power when this guy came up behind me and tried to shoot me down with his guns.
I wish I was a fighter pilot, soaring over everyone and everything.
But when I slowed way down like this, not expecting to recover, he tried to stay behind me and ended up crashing into a tree.
Oh my god! Oh, no way!
Call that a maneuver kill.
What?
And finally, I was chasing this F-14 Tomcat for a while. I kept losing him. I think something was probably wrong with my instruments or something. But I ended up finding him right here, popping up on the right side of my HUD real quick, right there.
Box 3.
Box 3 for a semi-active radar-guided missile. And splash.
Splash.
All in all, I really didn't have enough time today to go in depth with everything that I learned. I didn't get a chance to demonstrate the usage of bombs or how to dogfight. I tried aerial refueling once, I did try that, but my joystick isn't precise enough and it's just hard, so I blew up the tanker instead. In general though, I'd say that this project definitely gave me a better perspective on what it's like to be a pilot with, you know, micromanaging all these navigation, communication, utility equipment, and stuff like that. It definitely gave me a greater respect for the job and how difficult it is, and despite that, I haven't been dissuaded one bit from my goal to be an airline pilot. I mean, I would go Air Force, but they won't take me because I have a peanut allergy, which is odd. If we're in a place with only peanut butter, we're probably gonna die anyways, but whatever.
Chat, flare.